he talked about how this experience, he was vague about it, but was referring to this experience and talked about how paranoid he was and nervous about doing this because it's wrong, because it's illegal, because it's immoral and unethical. Hey there. I made it. I'm alive. I'm in my new apartment. As you can probably tell, maybe you can't tell, I did my best to create my YouTube setup that I had before, except mirrored. So I hope that doesn't bother anyone. Insert time already. Just a couple of things. I hope. One, I apologize for the audio quality in this video. I thought I had gotten everything squared away, but apparently I did not set everything up just right when I got set up here in my new place. So this should be fixed by the next video. Also, a lot of you are asking if I'm going to be addressing the Business Insider article about David Dobrik. I recorded this before that article came out or before I knew it was out, so I won't be addressing it directly, but I will be referring to it in a way. Just stay tuned and keep watching. I love you. Okay, thanks. Oh, yeah, and this was also recorded before that awful apology, but what is there to say about it? It was 2.5 minutes of him not taking responsibility for his role in any of these situations, because clearly this was written by or run past lawyers who do not want him to claim responsibility, as it'll hurt him legally later. So that's what I think about that, at least for now. You get to see more of my face. If I laugh or smile too hard, you will see where my dentist in DC did an extraction but failed to complete the dental work. Some dental tea for you. Couple other observations. I did tell you a couple of videos ago that I had a pair of glasses coming from Smart Buy Glasses a little bit late. I said that I might wear them in a video if they're cute. I think they're cute. Let me know what you think. A lot of you guys said that you liked the glasses from the last video, the kind of like lime green yellow ones that were called Lori, I think. I love those, but I'm curious to know what you think. Some other things, I don't know if you can tell, but my blush shattered during the move and then fell all over the floor and I had to pick it up. So we're working with red fingers and a fun gold spot of spray paint. Yay. All right, done with observations in terms of my life. If you can hear church bells, by the way, we're done with observations of my life, but like, hey, if you hear church bells in my neighborhood, I'm sorry, but also I'm not. Those are actually, as far as I know, you've probably heard me say this on different platforms, but the church in the very opening scene of Forrest Gump is within line of sight of my apartment, and from 8 o'clock to 8:05 here lately, the bells just toll for the full 5 minutes. So I don't know what that's about, but I think it's beautiful. So that said, David Dobrik is awful. Just awful. If you go back and watch my first couple of videos, I don't remember exactly what I said in them, but I did talk about YouTubers that I like and those that I don't like so much. And at that time, and for a while, David Dobrik was one of my favorite YouTubers. I did find him to be oddly charming in kind of a dorky way. I thought that he was a little bit awkward in the way he kind of orders his friends around. But then I saw all the car videos, and just like everybody else, well, much of his audience anyway, I took him for a super sweet guy, and I was a fan. And even still, I do think that most of his content is very entertaining. So from an entertainment standpoint, I do think that David Dobrik is talented. But what do I think of him as a person? Not thinking such good things about him these days. Much of my audience watches the Frenemies podcast, so you guys probably have seen by now that on this most recent episode this week, Trisha Paytas talked a little bit more about David Dobrik and some things that she witnessed, particularly around the situation with Durte Dom. If you're like me, you heard about this essay that happened at VidCon one year, but didn't know really the details. And Trisha has alluded to members of the group buying alcohol for underage fans, something like that. She's been vague about these things. And here recently, she's told us that a publication is doing a feature on David Dobrik and some of the claims people have made against him. And they were looking to Trisha Paytas to corroborate some of these stories. And according to David Dobrik's legal team, they wanted to paint Trisha as this kind of unhinged, mentally unstable stalker who is not a reputable source for this kind of information. So, I mean, I can see how something like that would embolden somebody like Trisha Paytas to just go ahead and say, you know, fuck it, I'm just going to go ahead and tell them what I know. Listen, like the Durte Dom content and really David Dobrik's content around that time when he lived in that apartment, like I can do without. But if you know, you know. There was one video in which I believe the crew was trying to stage a 5-way, if I'm not mistaken, a 5-way with Durte Dom and a handful of fans. And it's odd because the whole vlog squad is there, as well as these fans and Dom, of course. But then I guess it might be even weirder if it were just David and these fans and Dom. But then maybe it's just weird. Maybe it's just weird to try to stage a 5-way with fans. Maybe weird is not an appropriate word to use. Maybe it is awful. Maybe it is an abuse of power, just like we talked about in the last video. So the story, as Trisha tells us, is these fans came to the apartment to talk about having this 5-way, but in the end decided they didn't want to do it. They were really just fans of David Dobrik that wanted to be in one of his vlogs and wanted to meet him. Makes perfect sense. But after the girls said that they did not want to partake in this act with Dom, 2 of the girls were convinced later to go along with this. I'm going to try to see if I can find a clip of exactly how David worded it. But according to Trisha, the reason that these 2 girls were convinced, coerced, whatever word you want to use, to go along with having sex with Durte Dom was because the guys got them drunk, which is already wrong on more than one level.
So he asked Jason, and I was there, and I'm going to say, like, fortunately I was there because I told Jason, I'm like, these girls, we don't know how old they are. Like, they look so young to me. And I was like, and I knew they were definitely under drinking age because they couldn't go buy the alcohol. Like, we can't buy the alcohol. Like, we're not old enough. So Jason was going to go, and I was like, don't do that. Like, you're literally going to buy underage girls, like, alcohol. So Jason didn't. And then Jeff went, and I believe, like, Todd, I think, too. And they went and got alcohol. And Jeff talked about it on a barbershop, how uncomfortable he was. So he had Todd like buy it on his credit card, like something crazy. Whoa. And they didn't say the direct incident, but it was obviously the same thing. So Business Insider has this article out about it, whatever. And I was like, I'm going to give comment to this. It's not
out yet. It's coming out this week or sometime.
Yeah, it's not out yet. But I was like, I can give comment to this because I've talked about it before. And like, I was never my story to share really about these girls. But these, I guess 2 girls came forward. One who was like blacked out and one who was sober, who did the driving.
Whoa.
So,
that is so shady.
Well, what's so crazy is the spin they did on it. So then the lawyers, instead of...
That's so slimy. Hold on. I have to take a minute. So David, just simply because he wanted to make good content, went and got underage girls alcohol to loosen them up.
Yeah.
And did they end up sleeping with Dom?
So in the vlog, it does. In the vlog, he says they're not having it. They weren't feeling it. Then it cuts and he's like, with a little bit of like coercing, they were able to got three of the girls to have sex with them.
Still up?
At this point, me and Jason are gone because like right away, I was like, this is a bad situation. And I felt for the girls, like they definitely were like so uncomfortable with everything. And so I was like, we have to go. So we left, but it cuts to the vlog where they're having sex with Dom and like everyone's like listening in and like looking in on them and stuff like that. And so the one girl said she was completely blacked out. One girl was sober because she drove and remembered. And like I said, I wasn't there for the full thing. I was just there for the alcohol part. And I like just remember that so vividly. And a couple of the girls have like quotes from Jason that he said like creepy stuff to them and stuff, whatever. And the reason I commented on it was because I could finally back up this girl's story because I was there. Like a lot of these stories I can't back up because I wasn't there. But that one I was like, okay, I can back up that they did not want to do it. They said they were underage, that they couldn't buy alcohol is what I'm saying, underage with that. And he wanted Jason to originally do it. And then he got Jeff to go do it. And Todd, apparently.
You guys may or may not have watched my video where I talked about some really terrible things that happened around my alcoholism and getting sober. And I will just state this very clearly. If you are giving somebody alcohol or any substance to lower their inhibitions for the purpose of having sex with them, and reassuring that there will be little resistance, that is an SA. Loud and clear, that is an egregious crime, and you are a scumbag if that is something you do.
This is a super quick reminder to like this video and subscribe to my channel if that's something you want to do. If that's not something you want to do, just don't. I'll shut up and start talking now.
What makes it worse is that, according to Trisha, these girls were underage. They couldn't buy alcohol themselves. So David instructed Jason Nash, his lackey, instructed Jason to go get alcohol. Jason expressed that he wasn't comfortable with that. I don't know if Trisha had anything to do with that. But in the end, David ended up sending Jeff out. I think Jeff and Todd went to go buy these girls alcohol. And the way Trisha presented it to us in a video, she said, he talked about how this experience, he was vague about it, but was referring to this experience and talked about how paranoid he was and nervous about doing this because it's wrong, because it's illegal, because it's immoral and unethical. It goes along with what we talked about last week with David Dobrik using his power and his influence over his friends to get them to compromise their dignity, their morals, whatever you want to call it. I also said in that video, and did get a bit of criticism for it, I also said that people are responsible too for being cognizant of what they're willing to give up for power, for a taste of what David Dobrik offers his friends. And this is a prime example of that. David Dobrik is a shithead for sending Jeff out to go get alcohol to lower the inhibitions of these underage people. And when I say underage, I mean under 21. As far as I know, I don't believe these girls were under 18, but they were likely somewhere between 18 and 20, as they were not old enough to buy alcohol. But David is a shithead for that. Jeff is also a shithead for doing it. And so that's what I mean when I say that people should be cognizant of what they're willing to do for a taste of that power. I'm grossed out by him. I think that here recently we saw Scotty Sire experiencing a bit of a cancellation, although a lot of people are saying that he's been irrelevant for a while now. But we saw that Scotty Sire, after the whole Seth Francois situation came to light, or again, went on his channel to defend David Dobrik, providing text messages and voice memos, I think, between David and Seth. So that had to have been provided by David in order to try to absolve David of any wrongdoing.
So anyway, Scotty Sire, who doesn't know how to crop a note, said, "Hi again. Hi again.
Hi again."
Bro.
Okay.
Because
right.
Because this was hi. Hi again.
Stop it.
Dumbass.
They're so cringy.
First of all, I would like to apologize to anyone who feels as though I disrespected or invalidated their story. How about Seth specifically? That was never my intention, and I mean that so sincerely. Well, it was specifically your intention to invalidate Seth's story. That was your explicit, express intention. Yeah. I let emotions get the better of me, and I chose my approach and many of my words poorly. I chose to make the video and share my opinion. I expected it to be analyzed and picked apart, but I did not expect it to hurt so many people, and so I've made the decision to remove the video from my channel.
It wasn't your opinion. You literally said that's not the truth, Seth. You told a lie. Yeah, you're literally invalidating this.
Yeah, exactly. So I responded to him.
Opinion.
I said, Scotty, with peace and love, of course. You didn't just choose the wrong words. You ignored that David. So his video ignored pretty much every major development, including, I said, you ignored that David admitted to the pranks being racially motivated. You ignored that the first prank was not consensual. You can debate the second one. I think the second one was not consensual pranks are by definition not consensual.
And they were, but David and Jason have admitted that the second one he had no idea.
But like the first one, you can't even debate it, right? So he ignored that the first prank was not consensual, and he indirectly threatened the victim and tried to assassinate his character while bringing up like the revenge keyword and all that. Right. I was like, bro, just fucking own it. Like, this is some bullshit apology.
And in turn, Scott made himself look stupid. Again, Scott, people like him should be mindful of what you're doing for a taste of that power. But looking at David Dobrik, this is all speculation, but it makes perfect sense to me that David Dobrik likely had a conversation with either Scott or the Vlog Squad in totality, in part, whatever. I believe that this was arranged with David Dobrik, whether it was Scotty's idea or David's idea or somebody else's idea. I do believe that this was arranged so that David would not have to address that situation head on. It looked to me like David thought he had some receipts and wanted to put those out and explain himself without doing it himself. So again, speculation, but if that is what went down, again, like I said last week, David Dobrik is a puppet master and abusing his power and ended up taking something from Scotty Sire, essentially. And so I asked this in the last video, who's to blame in that situation? And that is where things get a little bit hairy because, like I said, I was criticized, and to anybody who may have disagreed with me in saying that people should be cognizant of what they're doing, I don't begrudge you at all for saying that, for thinking that, whether you still think that or not. I don't mind people disagreeing with me or even criticizing me, providing feedback in my comments section. I'm totally okay with that, so long as you're respectful. This is all about having conversations. This is all kind of a side note, but my channel is just about sparking conversations. I was having them in the comment sections of YouTube videos, and so I decided to start a YouTube channel. So please have these conversations. Please tell me where you disagree with me. Please don't be a dick about it. But anyway, this is kind of where I go back to saying, like, David Dobrik, you're a douchebag for taking that from Scotty, putting Scotty in that situation, doing that to Scotty, if what I think happened actually happened. However, I don't think any of us are just like letting Scotty Sire wipe his hands clean of this whole situation. Scotty Sire looked like a dick too. So that's what I mean when I say, like, it gets hairy, it gets complicated when you try to talk about who's to blame. But I can say that both parties are to blame for something in those situations. And with David Dobrik, it is this common theme of abusing his power and using it to manipulate people and situations in his favor. And, as we all know, just completely avoiding addressing any wrongdoing head on himself. There are a couple things I found interesting too, in addition to this. I remembered, I believe it might have been a Carly and Aaron video, because it got to the point where Carly and Aaron, as well as Zane and Heath, were the only Vlog Squad channels that I continued watching. I've not watched Carly and Aaron so much since the pandemic. Zane and Heath, sometimes I do like them. That's beside the point. I believe it was a Carly and Aaron video where they talked about David's driving. And I believe that Carly said that David does not have a driver's license and yet he speeds, and it makes her nervous. And I looked into this, and from what I could find, if not until now, that for a long period of time, David Dobrik has been or had been driving on an expired license since 2017. So that would be consistent with what I remember seeing in this video or hearing about in this video. And one of the reasons that is so nerve-wracking is because David is a DACA recipient, as most of you probably already know. So driving on an expired license, no license, suspended license, speeding, things like this could potentially get him in big trouble in terms of his immigration status. And when I heard that, I was just like, whoa, oh my goodness, like, he should be careful. And then hearing Trisha talk about it, about how many times he's talked himself out of tickets and has kind of like fed this story. I'm a DACA recipient to police officers. This is all alleged via Trisha Paytas on the Frenemies podcast.
Oh, he's admitted on the podcast too that like he's had Jason like take the wrath for his speeding tickets because if he gets like arrested,
that is a big crime.
It affects his immigration. He talks about it on the podcast. That's the thing.
Because he's DACA, right?
He's DACA, so if he gets arrested, it could affect his immigration status. So he said like he talked. He admitted a couple times he talked to a police officer out of giving him a ticket because for speeding in his Ferrari. And I think another time, I might be wrong on this one, but like he did shift the blame to someone else.
I realized, holy shit, David Dobrik is not just not being careful enough about obeying the law. He is actually using his immigration status in his favor, it looks like. And not just his immigration status. It's clear that it's his money, it's his power, it's his fame as well. But he's using, from what we heard, these things to get out of trouble. So it kind of goes along with this notion, this kind of vibe that David Dobrik has. And he really does give this off in a lot of the things he says and in his videos and other people's videos. But he seems to think of himself as invincible. And that's also consistent, in my opinion, with the fact that he does not address anything. Because chances are David Dobrik can continue to not address these things and still continue to have a successful career. It's kind of a toss-up at this point in terms of like seeing how that goes, but I would venture to say that David Dobrik is going to be just fine if he never speaks on any of these controversies or others moving forward. But yeah, that just wow. That's it. That's all. The thing that I found most disturbing, icky, uncomfortable. I mean, out of all the things that I'm talking about in this video, David Dobrik sending his friends out to get alcohol for people who are not of age to drink, that's the worst of his crime, particularly because he was doing so in order to facilitate a sexual assault by Dom on these girls. That is the worst thing that he's done in terms of what I'm talking about in this video, to be clear. But that was something that I kind of knew a little bit about. Like I said, we had some vague concept of what happened, but really no details or narrative or timeline. But this new information was something that I heard on the H3 podcast recently. And Ethan did bring it up in this episode of Frenemies too. So if you've seen this episode of Frenemies, or if you watch this episode of Frenemies, you will see where they talk about that. But he went into it more on the H3 podcast, where there was this clip, presumably from the Views podcast, where it was from the Views podcast. What am I saying? It was David and Jason talking about bullying. David asked Jason if he'd ever been bullied in school for being Jewish. And Jason said, yeah, absolutely. Kids were terrible at my school. They used to do things like throw pennies on the ground and say, oh, pick it up, Jew. Oh, there's a penny, Jew, go pick that up. And of course, I'm paraphrasing, but that was very much representative of what Jason said. And David's response to that, my God, he called Jason a sensitive asshole for being bothered by that.
They call me Dirty Jew. Yeah, I was the only Jewish kid in the school.
Shut up.
Yeah, only Jewish kid.
Did you get shit for that?
All the time. You walk down the hallway, someone just throw a penny on the ground. And everyone would laugh.
That used to happen at my school too.
All Jews.
But that's not shit. That's unless you're like a sensitive like asshole about it.
What? That sounds like a horrific fucking anti-Semitic moment. He just described a moment where someone threw a penny at his feet, said, pick it up, Jew, and everybody's laughing at him. And David goes, that's not shit unless you're a fucking pussy asshole about it. Does that sound a little twisted to anyone else?
It's fucked up, dude. It's so absurd that I thought I misunderstood what I was hearing.
My dad's been through that kind of shit growing up, and it's very traumatic. I mean, you know, my dad growing up, people like, he put up like Hanukkah lights. This is in the Valley right here in LA. And people drew a fucking swastika on his garage door.
Yeesh.
So he's like, even to this day, still like, no lights.
According to David Dobrik, these are just words. You'd have to be a sensitive asshole to be bothered by that. Are you kidding me? Somebody throwing pennies at your feet and say, go pick that up, Jew? What does a hate crime look like to David Dobrik? Meanwhile, he's supposedly on some anti-bullying tour. And Ethan made a really good point. He said that if your response to something like that is how David responded, saying, oh, you'd have to be a sensitive asshole or pussy or a little bitch to be bothered by something like that, then you're that guy, you're that bully. You are absolutely that person that would say and do those things, those hurtful, hateful things. And David, he brushed it off. He said, yeah, basically like the same thing used to happen at my school. As a side note, I find it interesting. I'm sure that there are a lot of factors at play in terms of how common it is for kids to be made fun of for things like this. Ethan asked the other guys on the H3 crew if they'd experienced anything like this in school. Of course, AB talked about experiencing bullying for being Muslim, or more so, I think he said his brother, after 9/11 happened, which I remembered that happened to the one Muslim kid at my school, and it happened to my siblings because they have brown skin, and it's unclear at first glance what their ethnic background is. But anyway, but they talked about whether or not Jewish kids were bullied for being Jewish in school. And I'm not one to say that never happened at my school because I'm not Jewish. So of course I wouldn't know. So I'd have to reach out to my Jewish friends from schools to see that if it ever happened. And I'm sure that the answer is yes, that it's happened. But the way that these guys talked about it, Jason said that it was a problem, a very prominent problem at his school, I'm assuming in the 80s or so. 80s, early 90s or so, I think is about when Jason was in high school. And David said that the same behavior was very common when he was in school, which I'm estimating that David Dobrik was probably in high school, I think right before he popped off on the internet. So he probably graduated like 2014, 2016.
So it hasn't changed at all in 20 years? Like, so people still do that?
No one was safe. Yes, of course.
Really?
Now it's changing. Now, at least from the internet is one of the most sensitive places on earth. So I don't know if that's changing in schools too. But like, I know where I grew up, it was, I mean, you can say
Brandon told me the same thing. Brandon, we were about the same age as Brandon, and he said in his school, in California, that it was the same.
No, it was.
So it's still brutal.
No, I mean, like, I know teachers that would make you dirty Jew jokes, like, because it's just
what?
It's not bad. They're just words, and like, I think maybe that's how we were raised. We're like, they're not.
You had a teacher that told a Jew joke.
We had really cool teachers.
So this was a problem when Jason was in school back then. It was a problem at David's school. David wouldn't call it a problem. I would. Around 2014 or so. But I don't remember that being such a problem. And mind you, I went to high school in Georgia. And that's not to say that kids weren't hateful and all of that. But it just kind of goes back to something that I've said before when it comes to things like how I've pointed out, like, all of these young influencers have had to apologize for, like, saying the N-word. And I've asked my audience, or just myself, or God, or just the void, what was going on between when I grew up to when these kids grew up that apparently we regressed so much? Because when I was growing up as a kid in the 90s, of course, racism was still very much alive, and alive in ways that many of us were not even cognizant of. But we at least knew it was bad. You don't say the N-word. You don't commit hate crimes. You don't bully someone for the color of their skin or their religion or anything like that. We knew that. Kids at Jason's school apparently didn't know that, and that's awful. But that was a while ago, and we hope that things progress. And then you get to influencers the age of, say, David Dobrik and Tana Mojo. I could name a bunch of people who have had to apologize, but you guys probably already know. What happened? I hope that I don't sound too disjointed, but I'm just trying to understand why hate crimes of this caliber and of this nature just became prevalent again in the new millennium, in the 21st century. Are you kidding me? And to tell your friend that he would have to be a sensitive asshole to be bothered by somebody bullying him and really assaulting him, if we're talking about people throwing coins at him. No, David, you're the asshole. Coming from somebody who was a pretty big fan pretty recently, I'm floored. What an asshole. And that's that. That's it. David Dobrik is an asshole. Too bad that can't be the title of this video, but it's sad. It's sad because we're starting to see the true colors of the vlog squad, and it's just making them so much less appealing than they once were. So I'm going to need to find some new creators that are more entertaining than the vlog squad, which many of you might say is a pretty low bar. If you know of a channel that you think I would like, I'm interested in your suggestions, and I'm interested to see who knows what I might like. I will say these days, I think I consume content that is a little bit better for me in terms of the thoughts they provoke. Again, filming, you start a sentence, you don't remember if you started with a singular, a plural, or what, and then you get to the middle of your sentence and you're like, shit, which form of this verb am I supposed to use? I watch content these days that I think is just better for my mind. A couple that I've mentioned, let's just go ahead and update while we're at it, since a year ago I told you YouTubers I love, and David Dobrik was one of them. I've been spending a lot of time watching a handful of channels. Possibly my favorite channel is Bailey Sarian. She does makeup while she talks about true crime. True crime is super interesting to so many of us. Of course, the stories are super interesting, but Bailey herself, you can tell that woman just has a heart of gold. Her personality, you want to be her best friend. You want to take her and say, hey, you're my best friend now. You have no say in this. Thank you. See you tomorrow. No, but really, she is so funny, so charismatic, so sweet. Everything about her, I love. I've also watched a lot of Psychology in Seattle. You guys have heard me mention Dr. Kirk Honda. It's basically a very cerebral way of consuming 90 Day Fiancé and shows like that. Dr. Kirk really just kind of breaks down these situations as if he were the couples therapist for the couples on the show. So I really love just watching anything psychology related, anything that might kind of help me learn a little bit more as a supplement to my regular therapy, because I don't use YouTube as a substitute for therapy, as Dr. Kirk always reminds us not to do. And along that same vein, because it is in the realm of psychology, these all kind of are, I really am a fan of Observe. I think a lot of you guys already watched that channel. I don't remember the name, or I don't know if I ever knew the guy's name. We'll call him Observe. Observe is the guy who is a body language analyst. And so he looks at videos and really breaks them down to read people's body language, determine whether or not he thinks they're being sincere or if they're lying. And he's also made some videos just around kind of some mentalism tricks. So that's really cool. Knowing that, and based on the other clues that I've given you here, if anything comes to mind to you that you think I might like, drop the channel name below and maybe I'll check them out. And at this point, is today the 17th? It is the 16th. My goodness, Savannah. I hear bagpipes out there, so I think it's party o'clock on a Tuesday night. That's not even St. Patrick's, but hey, open container laws. Savannah likes to party. So that said, I'm gonna get ready for bed. To you, the one person who's watching, who's not me, thank you for always coming back. Thank you for watching to the end. Thank you for your likes or your comments or just watching to this point. I love you, dude. And you guys will see me in the next one. All right, thanks. Bye.